Hello and welcome to this Microsoft Learning Lab at Digital Days. Our topic for this lab will be responsible AI and the ethical challenges one may face when building modern intelligent systems. My name is Anaïk Maréchal. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft, specialized in artificial intelligence, and I'll be your presenter for this session. Today, artificial intelligence is not sci-fi anymore. It's now part of our daily life and is spread over all kinds of industries in the markets. From consumer goods, for instance, with the Swiss beer, which recipe has been created by an AI algorithm, to manufacturing with Smart Factory, where the machine's outage can be predicted before they even break. And robots are enabled to handle more cognitive tasks and make autonomous decisions to improve the processes. But we can also find AI in finance, automotive, education, even arts. It's like there are no boundaries anymore on how AI can enhance our daily life with more safety, performance, and service personalization. The increasing compute power available and the high amount of data collected are the reason for the last decade's tremendous progresses. And this proliferation of data has also brought its own set of challenges. Data is now at the core of the company digitalization. The topic of responsible AI has become the most important theme in the enterprise AI market in 2019, as more companies struggle with challenges in governance, security, and compliance. The ability of AI systems to ensure data security and privacy, and the level of transparency of how systems work and are trained, are now the two most important requirements when investing in machine learning technology. It's a marked shift from previous years, when scalability, performance, and easy-to-use tools were respectively the top investment priorities. This can be easily understood when we look at sectors dealing with highly sensitive data, such as healthcare. The number of AI applications in the Swiss healthcare system has significantly increased in the last few years. We're unable to meet health demands as AI begins to assist medical professionals in their daily tasks. It's allowing them to complete tasks faster and therefore to spend more time with patients. The integration of AI into healthcare processes has also allowed researchers to go through thousands of medical records and data, drawing useful insights and conclusions quicker, helping to save more lives. However, in the context of medical data collection, how to make sure that the confidentiality is always respected? How to control that the best decision has been taken in every situation if the algorithm is working as a black box? Finally, who's taken accountable in case a problem happens with a patient? Studies have shown that explainability of algorithms are one of the key factors holding business back from implementing AI. Trust in an AI system is tied to transparency. And without trust, people do not want to adopt AI. If AI systems are opaque and unable to explain how or why certain decisions have been made, this lack of transparency will undermine trust in the system and in its results. There are hundreds of machine learning algorithms that data scientists can access now, and new ones emerge every day. In producing a functional business tool, the correct algorithm and machine learning problems must be in alignment. So why are we discussing about responsible AI today? The speed of improvement and innovation in AI is fast, and today in many domains, AI has even reached the human parity in terms of capabilities. Who would have guessed that one day a computer might recognize a dog picture better than a human being, right? This means that many decisions and actions taken by human beings will or already are taken by machines. And the proximity to human intelligence and its power to both harm and good is what's making AI so different from any other technology. Despite the debates about the good and the badness of future intelligent systems, the question doesn't really sit here. An AI doesn't intrinsically have malicious or virtuous motivations. It all depends on how it has been trained in the first place. See, developing an AI system is just like teaching something to a kid. You feed the system with a big amount of data so it can learn from its main pattern. So what if you provide corrupted data to the machine? This can be a volunteer action if you have wholesale motivation. That was the case, for instance, with the Microsoft chatbot on Twitter, you may remember, which turned racist in less than a day because it learned from inappropriate interaction with its users. But perhaps, and this can be even more threatening, a harm can be introduced with no bad intention in the first place. This is what we call a bias. It can have multiple origins like culture, location, experience. Let's take an example. You're an IT company using AI to filter new candidates' application based on their CV. The idea here is to speed up the hiring process and having a more egalitarian selection with the assumption that computers can help being more neutral. So to do so, you train the AI based on your current employees' data to find similar profile to the one you already got. But after a while, with the new system running, you noted that very few females make it until the end of the process, although more and more women are attracted by IT, right? So what could have happened? Your company historically doesn't count a lot of females. So based on your data, your AI just learned from the pattern that females are statistically less depicted and just reproduced that into your new system. So whose responsibility is it in this kind of scenario? Is it the developer for having introduced this bias? Or is it the whole society for the old prejudice of gender stereotypic jobs? So here it's a fundamental socio-technical challenge that we're facing, which means it's not only driven by the technology and its limits, but also by our very complex human behavior and our interactions. We are all responsible for having fair and inclusive intelligent machines. Bias are naturally everywhere, good or bad, in our society, and this is okay. It's just our duty at everyone's level to acknowledge them and to be transparent about it. To help putting these principles into practice, Microsoft believed that the development and deployment of AI must be guided by the creation of an ethical framework that I'll present here. This view is set in a book called The Future Computed, and it states that there are 6 core principles that should guide the work around AI. There are 4 core principles: fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, and inclusiveness. And they are underpinned by 2 fundamental principles of transparency and accountability. For us, these principles are the foundation for a responsible and trustworthy approach to AI. Let's go through them. The first principle is fairness. AI systems should treat everyone fairly and avoid affecting similarly situated groups of people in different ways. We want to make sure we don't reinforce stereotypes in allocating or withholding opportunities or resources to some people. For example, when AI systems provide guidance on medical treatment or for loan application, the system should make the same recommendations to everyone who has similar symptoms or financial circumstances. Let's have a look at an example. This example is about COMPASS, which stands for Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. So just a very long name for a software that is decision support tools used by the US courts to assess the likelihood of a defendant to become a recidivist. And this software resulted in significant racial disparities. So the algorithm was very likely to falsely flag Black defendants as future criminals, and it was wrongly labeling them at almost twice the rates as white people. And the white defendants were mislabeled at a lower risk, very more often than the Black people. The negative impact of the tool hasn't even been measured by the Court of Justice until an NGO named ProPublica decided to investigate on the hidden effect of this algorithm and published the paper. So if we think at what could have been done, Compass could have published upfront what their fairness measurement criteria was and this predictive parity of reoffense rates between Black and white people. And this could have helped making them more accountable for the algorithm. But we can also wonder whether such a technology should be used at all at this point of time, right? So as we discussed earlier, fairness doesn't only rely on technical components, but also on the social context around it. Each of us, as humans, carry inherited biases. And those biases affect our decisions and actions, which are recorded in the data that we are using to train AI systems. And for this reason, to get more fairness in AI, we also need a greater diversity of people developing the AI systems, as well as using the system. And thus, we try to make sure that we reduce the risk of harmful prejudices and discriminatory decisions. The second principle is reliability and safety. To build trust, it's also important that AI systems operate reliably, safely, and consistently under normal circumstances, but also in unexpected conditions. The way the AI system behave and the variety of conditions they can handle reliably is reflecting the range of situation and circumstances that the developer anticipating during the design and the testing phase. AI development is different than the other technology development because AI tools are probabilistic systems. So by nature, AI system will have errors. And to make sure the technology is safe, we need to understand not how accurate they are or how few errors the system makes. We need to understand what kind of error the system is making. A parallel can be drawn with the creation of the car, for instance, where it led to the development of a number of safety standards and helping improving the safety of the driver and society more broadly. And this now needs to be taken forward to the AI development as well. Let's have a look at an example. So here I want to tell you about a project from scientists in the UK and in India that showed possible use case for using machine learning to analyze live video. The scientists wanted to identify violent behavior in crowds with the help of drones equipped with cameras. The researchers published a paper called Eye in the Sky, where they describe their system. So it uses a simple drone to transmit the video footage over a mobile connection for real-time analysis. There, an algorithm trained using deep learning estimates the poses of the humans in the video and matches them to postures designated as violence. For the purpose of the project, they just kept 5 poses, which are strangling, punching, kicking, shooting, and stabbing. The hope of the scientists was that the system may be used to detect crime in public spaces and in large events. However, this research case can be taken with caution. specifically with regards to its claim of accuracy. The researchers report that the system was 94% accurate at identifying violent poses. But they note that the more people that appear in the frame, the lower is its accuracy rate. For instance, it fell to 79% accuracy when looking at 10 individuals. So most importantly, these figures don't represent the real-world usage. Because in order to train and test their AI, the researchers recording their own video clips with volunteers pretending to attack one another. So the volunteers were very spaced apart and attacked one another with exaggerated movements. And therefore, there's a big difference between the stage tests and the real-world use case, where in real world, the pictures can be more blurry and the crowds are bigger. And also the risk of misinterpretation can be higher then. So people might rightly fear that they can be constantly monitored and analyzed, and that their movements can be misinterpreted. So when speaking to The Verge, the lead researcher of this study, called Singh, defended his work. And he said that despite the criticisms, it could have a positive effect on the world. Like stopping crime and terrorism. He suggested that the new regulation might be needed so that such technology might not be misused. But he also admitted that there was no good answer to the lowering scenario that we mentioned before. He said, I quote, that anything can be used for good, anything can be used for bad. So when it comes to reliability and safety in AI systems, we must remember that every potential risk and harm must be quantified as well as well understood to be shared with the users of the system. It's also crucial to develop AI systems that can protect privacy and security. As AI becomes more prevalent, protecting privacy and securing the important personal and business information is becoming more critical and also more complex. Privacy and data security issues require especially close attention for AI because access to data is essential for AI system to make accurate and informed predictions about people. As an industry, we've made significant advancements in privacy and security, fueled by regulation like the GDPR and the European Data Protection Regulation, for instance. Yet, with AI system, we must acknowledge that the tension between the need for more personal data to make system more personal and effective and privacy is there. So just like the birth of connected computers with the internet, we are also seeing a huge uptick in the number of security issues related to AI. But at the same time, we've seen AI being used to improve security. As an example, most modern antivirus scanners are driven by AI heuristics today. We need to ensure that our data science processes blend harmoniously with the latest privacy and security practices. You may have heard of the story about this American store called Target. Their data scientist, Andrew Paul, was able to identify about 25 products that, when analyzed together, allowed to assign each shopper a pregnancy prediction score. They could even estimate the due date within a small window of time. And so Target could send coupons timed to very specific stage of the pregnancy. And about a year after the creation of this pregnancy prediction model, that came to see the manager of the Target because he just discovered his daughter was pregnant because she was receiving these targeted coupons. So that's when AI is going ahead of human knowledge. And this can be very dangerous in terms of data privacy, right? So to prevent an exposure of private information through AI systems, it's important to limit the collection of personal information to only what's necessary. And that's what is written in the GDPR, for instance. Running models locally on the user devices can also help removing potential vulnerabilities because we're exposing less in this case. Going through the security aspects of AI systems, we need to question where the data is coming from, if the prediction is using user data or a public data source, how to prevent corruption on this data, and we need to use solutions like anomaly detection to prevent breaches. Let's talk about inclusiveness. For the 1 billion people with disabilities around the world, AI technology can really be a game changer. AI can improve access to education, to government service and information. Inclusive design practice can help system developers understand and address potential barriers in product environments that could unintentionally exclude some people with disabilities, but also everyone actually. And by addressing these barriers, we create opportunities to innovate and to design better experience to benefit everyone. So this is one of my favorite applications. This is at the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York, where nearly 700 of the students are deaf or hard of hearing. And they take classes with students who are hearing correctly. So the caption on the screen behind the teacher with the headsets are generated by an AI-powered communication technology. And this system uses an advanced form of automatic speech recognition to convert the raw spoken language into a fluent and punctuated text that is even then translated into more than 60 languages. So it's an ideal tool to access the spoken language in addition to the ASL that you see on the right of the image. AI must be developed and deployed in a way that can benefit to all and be accessible by all. We need to have an intentionally diverse approach towards AI and make sure that underrepresented minorities are part of the design and the testing phase. Let's have a look at transparency. When AI systems are used to help inform decisions that have tremendous impact on people's lives, it's very critical that people understand how these decisions were made. And a crucial part of transparency is what we refer to as intelligibility, or if we want, the useful explanation of the behavior of an AI system and of their components. Improving intelligibility requires that the stakeholders comprehend how and why they function, so that they can identify potential performance issues, or even safety and privacy concerns, bias, and intended outcomes. We also believe that those who use AI systems should be honest and forthcoming about when, why, and how they choose to deploy it. Transparency, together with fairness, is today one of the biggest areas of research. AI systems can be so complex that it may sometimes be hard to understand how they work and to interpret the results they produce. And this lack of understanding may also affect the decisions made after these tools are used. So this example may be a bit more advanced than the previous one, but I hope you can get the idea behind it. In the mid-90s, a multi-institutional project started, which goal was to predict the pneumonia risk level to decide whether or not admit someone on the hospital based on the probability of death. They tested multiple models for this study, and the most accurate one was neural nets. And although it was the most accurate models, after careful consideration, they considered it was too risky to be used. So why? One of the other evaluated model was rule-based learning, which is a way more simpler model and not as accurate as the neural nets. But the advantage here was that it was actually interpretable by humans, while neural nets work more as a black box kind of things. On one of the pneumonia datasets, the rule-based system learned that having asthma led to a lower risk of pneumonia. So needless to say that this is counterintuitive, right? As pneumonia is very dangerous for asthmatics. But somehow it reflects a true pattern in the training data. Patients with a history of asthma usually were admitted directly to the intensive care unit, and therefore the aggressive care they received was so effective that it actually lowered their risk of dying of pneumonia compared to the general population. So the model was incorrectly learning from the data that having asthma is a good thing if you get pneumonia, which is the opposite of reality. The pattern is true in the data, so strictly speaking, it's accurate. But if we use this model to make decisions about whether or not to admit someone in the hospital, it would hurt the asthmatic population. So it's not safe at all to be used. So the key problem here are these bad patterns that we don't know about. The neural nets are more accurate models, but we don't know everything that the neural nets is using. And we've seen that it's really important to understand the model before it's being deployed. So that's something we absolutely need to consider when developing AI systems. Transparency means that the people creating AI systems should be open about how and why they are using AI, and also about the limitations of their systems. It also means that people should be able to understand behaviors of the AI systems. And if you're attending this session, it's a really good sign that you're getting till there. Our final principle is accountability. We believe the people who design and deploy the AI system must be accountable for how the system operates. The need for accountability is specifically crucial with sensitive use of technology like facial recognition. Recently, there has been a growing demand for facial recognition technology, especially for law enforcement organizations who see potential in this technology in finding, for instance, missing children. However, we recognize that this technology could potentially harm or be used to put fundamental freedoms at risk. By example, by enabling continuing surveillances of specific individuals. To that end, we have Microsoft publicly called for regulation of facial recognition technology and developed 6 guidelines on how our organization can use this facial recognition technology responsibly. Accountability is still a very complex topic and is leaving today a lot of questions unsolved. For instance, whom do I sue when I get hit by a driverless car? What if a medical robot gives a patient the wrong drug? Or what if my vacuum robot sucks up my hair while I'm napping on the floor? And this actually happened to a woman in South Korea. And can a robot commit a war crime? Accountability is the boundary between technology, philosophy, and law. From an AI design point of view, it's about testing extensively to be ready for unexpected circumstances and always keeping a human in the loop. Ultimately, one of the biggest questions for our generation, as the first generation that is bringing AI to society everywhere, is how to ensure that computers will remain accountable to people and how to ensure that the people who design computers remain accountable to everyone else. So we have seen, discovered, and understood the 6 pillars for responsible AI that Microsoft designed to develop and use AI technologies. How now put that into practice with some example that we implement as a company. At Microsoft, we put responsible AI and the principle we just saw into practice through the development of resources and the development of a system of governance. And we are willing to encourage and empower our customers and users to do the same and get inspired maybe by our model. The responsible AI practice starts within a human-centric design that spans roles. And it took over 20 years of research to apply this design in the development of AI guidelines and standards that are meant to help others address potential issues throughout the software development lifecycle and developing a responsible AI system. So some of the guidelines include human AI guidelines, conversational AI guidelines, inclusive design guidelines, an AI fairness checklist, and a datasheet for datasets. In addition to these practices, we've developed a set of tools to help others understand, protect, and control their AI at every stage of innovation. Our tools are a result of collaboration across disciplines to strengthen and accelerate responsible AI, spanning software engineering and development to social sciences, user research, law, and policy. And the tools are a variety of asset types. At the highest level, we've launched a series of research papers that set the context behind AI systems. And to further the collaboration, we also open source many tools and datasets that others can use to contribute and build upon, and I encourage you to have a look. We've also democratized our tools through our managed services offered through Azure Machine Learning, our cloud offer. Across responsible AI is the critical importance of governance that really starts from the beginning in the business case through to the design, development, and the ongoing management of AI. Our governing practices help to ensure and foster responsible AI, both within our company, but also beyond. Our current model relies upon centralized and decentralized function to put our responsible AI principles into practice. This hub and spoke model provides the accountability and authority to drive initiatives while also enabling responsible policies to be implemented at scale. Today, our system includes the establishment of a chief ethics officer, an ethics office, ethics committee, and an AI handbook. Our governance system will, of course, continue to evolve to this day, as it should, because a governance system should be agile, just like the nature of technology and the nature of business. By transforming our industries and addressing critical issues facing humanity, AI is already solving some of our more complex challenges, and it redefines how humans and technology interact. Today, we have outlined some of the steps we're taking to prioritize responsible AI in hopes that our experience can help others. I put here some links so that you can develop your own AI strategy, or just if you are curious to know more. So on the left, you can access our AI business school, and on the right, some very interesting resources on responsible AI. Thanks a lot for your participation in this learning lab on responsible AI at